everybody. Welcome to the show.
I am so impressed.
That I talked first.
That you did. Go ahead. You go right ahead.
You want me? I'll do it.
Take-
Now that I'm officially a part of the team, I will go ahead. Let me start the introduction. We are basically continuing our conversation from last week, except for this week's a little different. We have an actual law enforcement officer with us who's going to remain anonymous, so you will not see his face. Me and Tom don't even know the name, so we're anonymous as could be. Ashley's the only person that knows anybody right now. So,
Yes.
but this is we're basically we're going to continue on with missing persons and how things are handled from a law enforcement perspective, which I think is kind of interesting because it's not every day we get to talk to somebody about how things are handled within a department and all that stuff. So
let's bring them in.
let's do it. Hello, friend.
Good evening.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We had a really great conversation last week, kind of revolving around missing persons cases, the media and how they portray certain things. So we had a lot of questions coming in, and I know the three of us had a lot of questions, kind of how the police force handles certain things, how they go about it, and kind of like what are the first things they look for. So I know Nate has a lot of questions, so I'm going to let Nate go ahead and take it away. Welcome to the team, buddy.
Thanks. I'm trying to think of a good one to really start on. Well, first, how about without giving us any specifics, can you tell us a little bit about, how long you've been an officer, what you typically do, and stuff like that, without going into specifics?
Yeah, my law enforcement career started almost 20 years ago. I started when I entered into the U.S. military. I'm not going to say what branch I was in, but I enlisted in as a police officer for that specific branch. I did that for 6 years. I was stationed overseas and stateside. Once I was done with that, I worked at multiple agencies, either part-time or full-time, since I got out of the military. And I've been doing this for almost about 20 years. I have a background, I have a bachelor's degree in police science with a minor in psychology. I currently am assigned to the patrol division. I am a field training officer. I'm also on a tactical team, a SWAT team. I also do some other stuff that I'm not going to mention because it would maybe narrow down where I'm located at, because I do some unique things for my geographical location. But I do a lot of different things. I also do a lot of instructing. I hold multiple instructor certs and a bunch of different things.
So you have quite a bit of experience. So, I'm gonna go right into the hard question, and I know it's something that the three of us kind of agree on. When it comes to missing persons cases, and when it comes to certain things that you see on TV, the media absolutely has a say in how much something is publicized and how it is portrayed. In that sense, how does that affect a department or a law enforcement in general?
Media portrayal can be both a good and a bad thing. Obviously, if the media gets involved in a particular case, um, it opens up the public resource to us. It opens up people that might have seen something, heard something, or know something about a particular case that they at the time didn't realize was an issue until after they see something on the news, and then they start calling tip lines, that kind of stuff. It can also be a negative. Now, a potential suspect knows that there is a case open, we're investigating something, and if we're not gaining information that we need to solve the case and the media is picking up on it, it starts to create that negative feedback loop where we're starting to get negative publicity because we're not able to solve a case, which does happen.
Now, I would assume typically too, when the media does get involved, you'll start getting a whole bunch of different tips, and I'm sure a lot of them aren't helpful at all. But how do you like siphon through the different tips and figure out where to go with what's legit, I guess is the word. I'm sure like that once it gets the mainstream, you're going to get bombarded. I would assume with a whole bunch of different. Well, I saw this type of thing.
Oh, absolutely. I
Mhm.
mean, we'll get tips that have absolutely nothing to do with it. I mean, say we're working a abduction case, a child abduction case, and we say it was a silver Ford, for example. I got people calling in about every silver car. It doesn't matter what make or model it is,
Mhm.
year, nothing. People are calling in saying that they saw a silver car drive down the road 3 years ago and it was the suspect. So it takes some time to weed through good tips and bad tips. And then it's
Mhm.
finding the good tips and putting them into that puzzle on where does this actually fall within what we know about a case. And it's amazing what things can end up leading to that could actually solve a case.
Mhm.
Now, when you come across, say, in one area, if you get bombarded with, say, 5, 6, 7 missing persons cases, are there certain factors that you guys kind of look at first to say, okay, this, unfortunately, if anybody goes missing, it's very upsetting, but is there something that you look for to say, okay, this one's a little bit more prominent, we need to work on this one first, and we'll work on these, but maybe not as quickly as that one? Are there like certain things you look for?
Yes, the primary thing is first and foremost, and this is going to sound, and I'm going to explain what I mean by this. Going missing is not inherently a crime. I, as an adult, could literally just walk away from my life as I know it right now, leave my cell phone, wallet, everything at home, walk away, and just disappear, and no crime has been committed. But I am still a missing person if they have no idea
Mhm.
where I went. So that would be like the lowest priority. What would be the pecking order for priority would be we actually have information, whether it's witnesses, video, something like that, that a violent offense occurred, like a true child abduction or a true kidnapping, where someone was taken against their will. So now a crime has been committed on top of the missing person case. Those are going to receive the priority compared to we just can't locate someone, but we have no information telling us that there was a crime committed.
Okay, that makes
It makes
sense.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and when it's explained like that, it does make a lot more sense, because I know last week's show we brought this up about, I think we used Tom as an example that if his wife just walked out and he reported her missing saying, hey, this is not like her, technically she's still an adult. And as police, you guys don't know if it's a violent home or if she's just walking away. So hearing that, that does kind of that makes more sense, because people,
Mhm.
you know, it is, I mean, unfortunately, I would rather children be looked for first before me if I went missing. Sad as that sounds.
Right.
Mhm.
And obviously like a runaway child is going to be, you know, taken as a higher priority just because they're a child. So they have limited resources. The possibility of them being influenced or something like that negatively is obviously higher due to their endangered state because they don't have money, they don't have a checking account or any of those kind of things, compared to an adult who in theory could have resources available to them, friends or family in another state or something like that. The probability of them having the resources to sustain themselves is higher than a juvenile.
So when a juvenile does go missing, and violent or not violent witnesses, all of that, how long normally would it be before other departments and other resources are brought in? Because I know where I'm from, and I mentioned this last week, where I'm from, I'm Northeast Ohio, so there's Toledo, and there's a lot of major highways that run. So people could go missing and end up in different states very quickly. So at what point do the law enforcement decide, okay, we need to get other resources involved, we need to get other states involved, and kind of put like a bolo out?
That actually happens instantly.
Oh,
If we have a missing juvenile, whether or not it's just a true runaway, what I mean by that is just we are fairly confident that the juvenile has just left the home for whatever reason, but there was no crime committed. This wasn't an abduction or anything like that. This is a true runaway case. We put out those bolos the second we get all that information. I get all the information, I contact my dispatch center, and that gets blasted out to the entire state. If we have information from the family or friends that they might be going somewhere specifically, like say they have a grandparent in another state, we will then contact that state agency, whether that's their highway patrol or state police force or that local police department, and then give them all that information so they're aware of the situation so they can maybe go over to that person's house, make contact with them, try to figure out what's going on. Technology is a great thing. Your local law enforcements are a lot more interconnected than I think what the general public realizes. Most of us know officers at, or at least our surrounding agencies, fairly well, especially if you're on any sort of like specialized detail like marshal services or SWAT teams or something like that. We all have contacts. We will push the things um, out that way too, so that information gets out almost immediately. Once I have the information, that information gets put out.
okay. And saying, I don't think people realize that and realize like how quickly you guys do jump on that kind of thing, which is it's reassuring and it kind of puts a little relief out because I think people assume that you get the missing persons report, you guys go back, kind of look at it, and I know I think this was brought up last week. Most people think that there's like that 48-hour rule where you have to wait a certain amount of time before anything starts to get investigated. So knowing that those steps are taken right away, I think people are going to find reassurance in that personally.
Yeah, and once that information gets put out, the computers that are in the cruisers, we all get an alert on that. So we know instantly that there's some sort of information that's of critical importance. All the information is there. Um, if it's something more directly specific to that particular agency, we'll get a call directly from that other agency, the investigating officer or the supervisor or something, to give us more detailed information than what the computer systems are able to character limits and stuff like that put out to us. So that information and a lot of information gets out very quick.
You had mentioned technology a little bit ago and how you are able to talk to different people. Well, obviously you said 20 years now. 20 years ago, social media, Facebook, and stuff like that was not a thing, and now things. We had a conversation last night about something, and I had information wrong, and from what were the facts. How much does like misinformation, when like certain things get out and people are saying, well, this is what it is, and something completely different. How often does that like impact like a missing persons case?
The lie will travel 1,000 times faster than the truth. Every
Mm-hmm.
single time without fail, the lie will always travel. And I guess I shouldn't say lie, but the misinformation will travel
Mm-hmm.
faster than the truth. It happens every time. And the reason why that happens is because if I put out the wrong information, I am held liable. Where
Mm-hmm.
if the general public people start putting out bad information, they're typically not held to the same standard as what I am. So if my agency puts out, or just like same as like a news agency puts out bad information, we are going to be held to a different standard than just a random citizen putting something out
Mm-hmm.
into like a citywide Facebook group or something like that. So it gets very difficult to stop that from happening because information moves at the speed of light with the internet, and
Mm-hmm.
I can't do that. I have to make sure I have the correct information before I can put anything out.
Now, when investigating a missing persons case, I know, and maybe I don't know, again, this is all assumptions. Normally, the family is the first to be looked at, as it should be, especially in children cases and things like that. But how often do you find that like the family kind of sways from the truth because they are worried that they're going to be suspects?
It really is a case by case dependent thing. If they're not involved in it in any way, shape, or form, they're going to give the information up pretty relatively fast. If they are involved in it, you're going to start being able to poke holes in their story relatively quick because certain things are just not going to match up. Um, it's really hard to give a generalized statement on that because each of these cases is so specific as to what happened and what was going on that led to why I got called there, that you're really going to have to look at each one in isolation to pick apart the pieces to figure out why it is that the like a family member's become the prime suspect in the missing person.
Yeah, because I know one of the ones that people had brought up to me after last week's show was Casey Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't sure if I wanted to bring that up because it's an odd case. You know, she's blaming the father, he's blaming her. No one really were blamed. It's a weird thing. And in that situation, when you do have a mother that says, "Oh, I just kind of fell asleep," I feel like and then seeing the pictures and the videos and like, I feel like that's so hard because I feel like the cops in that situation did the right thing and then it went to court and she got off free. And unfortunately, the law enforcement got the backlash of that when in reality, they really had nothing to do with it. And how many times do you guys feel like you guys unfortunately are the fall? You guys take the fall for a lot of these things when something is maybe the person's not convicted or the person is convicted. And how does that affect you and how you do your job?
It can be very frustrating. The amount of hours that can go into some of these cases. I mean, a case like that. I mean, you're talking hundreds and hundreds of hours, and that's just the primary agency. That's not taking into account crime lab analysis, coroner analysis. And once all that stuff gets done, it then goes back to the investigating agency and checked. They might be bringing in outside agencies to check their work. On top of that, that happens quite frequently on especially a big national profile case like that one was. You're going to start using outside resources to assist. It can be very frustrating to spend all that amount of time and then something go to court and a person either get acquitted or they get found guilty but get a very reduced sentence due to a plea bargain or something like that. And then yes, it for some reason, and I don't have an answer why we get blamed for what the court does, but it happens quite frequently, and I really don't know why.
Yeah. And I think too with that, I think the media, honestly, I really think they have a lot to do with that because in today's world, I mean, I am not in law enforcement, and it's scary for me to think about what you guys have to go through on a daily basis and how easy it is for the media to blame you for anything. And I think people forget, are there bad people? Yes, there's bad people in every single workplace you go to, but there's a lot of good people. And I think I think public forgets that because you guys are the fall guys, and it sucks. And how does that affect you as a person? Having to deal with these kinds of things, knowing that you're a good police officer and you have to see so much hate going around.
We are held to a higher standard, and we should, based on what I do and the responsibility that's been entrusted to me by the general public. When you take the oath to become a police officer and you do this job, the public expects you to hold yourself to not just the baseline standard, but a higher standard, and they should. The problem starts to come in where this idea of we know everything that everyone's doing on every single call that I'm able to witness guys do the wrong thing all the time. You know, we run solo patrol. I'm not on a lot of calls with a lot of these other guys, so if they're doing something, I'm not there to even witness it, let alone put a stop to it. Um, and it generates a lot of clicks when a police officer screws something up and breaks the law or does something heinous. It generates a lot of clicks for the media.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
They're going to
you're
see the bad stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and
Well,
we do have a couple. I just want to say we do have a couple people in the comments. We can't see them on here, but I do have it going on Facebook. Um, I have someone on here that says 15 years retired cop. They support you, and they want me to ask you. It says, how does it feel days, weeks, and overtime researching, digging into everything, than to just have a DA make a deal for an easy conviction?
it can be very disheartening
Mhm.
sometimes, especially when I've literally had this happen before where I've arrested a person. They've gone to court the next day, and I've arrested them like literally almost immediately after they got out of court for the exact same thing again. And it's like, I know you had court today. Like, did you go to court? Yeah, I went to court. And you've been done with court for an hour, and here we are again. We just had one uh, a week ago. It was a protection order violation. Same thing. Arrested, went to court, immediately got out and violated the protection order again. With not even within 10 hours, violated it again, and here we go again. It can get very disheartening sometimes. I tell the younger officers that I train, it's like, listen, you can only affect the situation now. Do your job, do it the right way, and worry about what you can control. You've stopped the situation in this moment. Tomorrow's a new day. If you need to stop it again, you stop it again. That's all you can do. The chips fall where they fall when things go to court, because we get very little. I think sometimes that there's a misconception that we have a lot more say when things go to court than what they really do. If you have a really good prosecutor, and I've been blessed that I've had some good prosecutors in my career. I've had some really bad ones, but I've had some good prosecutors. They will want your input on cases, but I have friends that are at other agencies that have bad prosecutors, and they don't care. They don't care if the officer was assaulted or what this person did. They just want to clear their docket out. So that's what they do. Take the plea. Here's the plea. Clear the docket. That's all they're worried about.
See, and that's horrible because not only are they putting law enforcement at risk again, but now they're putting individuals at risk. Like that protection order, if that was a violent person, you arrested him, you did what you were supposed to do, he got released, he could have gone out and hurt that person. He could have gone out and kidnapped that person, and now it's a whole different thing. And it's almost like you guys have to continuously fight an uphill battle.
As you said that you had that retired officer in there, he'll tell you deal with the same people over and over and over again, and then you've been doing this a while. You deal with the parents, then you deal with their kids, and then if you do it long enough, you end up dealing with their grandkids, and it's the same people day in and day out. And I have to remind myself not to become jaded. The vast majority of people that I deal with are good people. They're trying to do the right thing, and they are doing the right thing. It's a small segment of the population that we really have a problem with, that are really committing these crimes.
See, and that's sad. I think in my situation, I would almost be embarrassed. Like if I got arrested and then got released and got arrested again, I would not want to have to explain myself. Like, people make mistakes and apparently I'm an idiot. Um, but I guess in today's world, like you had said backstage, is people just don't take accountability anymore and they just kind of blame everything and everybody else.
Yeah, yes. I've been doing it for a little while, obviously, and it seems like it's becoming more and more prevalent. Um, I'll arrest someone for doing something pretty bad, and they're yelling and screaming at me that I've ruined their life. Well, no, I'm not the one who made you get behind the wheel of this car and drive the wrong way down the road. and hit another car head on the freeway. I had nothing to do with that. That was every decision you made. I didn't make you rob this store. I didn't make you buy these drugs. I didn't make you do these things. You made these decisions, but they have zero account. They're blaming everyone but looking at themselves in the mirror. I think that's more of a human condition problem than anything else. I think we all tend to do that in some way, shape, or form. But it seems to be becoming more and more prevalent, from minor things all the way up to major offenses.
Well, and that could, I mean, that could have something to do with the courts as well. I mean, if you do something and you just get a slap on the wrist, you're not really going to think much of it until somebody throws the book at you. But unfortunately, you guys don't have a say in that, unfortunately, and it just kind of it
That's
sucks.
100%. I think what it is, a lot of it also has to do with the juvenile justice system. If anyone listening has ever been doing this and has dealt with the juvenile justice system, I tell my rookie officers a story where, I got to know some juveniles that were 16, 17 years old, and they were just nonstop, just always causing problems, always getting arrested. And they weren't minor things, so just breaking curfew, that kind of thing. They were committing some serious crime. And it was just constant slaps on the wrist. And I kept warning them every time I would take them to the DH, like, you guys got to stop. Like, you're almost 18. You're almost 18. And sure enough, on the one kid's 18th birthday, stole a car, wrecked it, drunk, had a gun, and this kid has been 18 only for a few hours, and he's in the back of my cruiser with 5 or 6 felonies, and I'm taking him to jail. And he realizes I'm not going the way to the detention home. He's like, "Well, where are you going?" I'm like, "You're 18 now. You're in an adult world, and you haven't even been 18 24 hours, and you're a felon." They don't
Yeah,
get it.
and some they don't, and they ruin their lives, and it's sad because you guys are there to try to help them, and they're just not doing it. With that, I just got the reminder that we are halfway through the show, so we are going to take just a quick commercial break, grab some drinks, take a breather, but we will be back in just a few minutes. Here's a quick commercial for you guys.
I want to play a game. You've wandered through life searching for the unknown, craving the thrill of the unexplained, yet you've only scratched the surface. You indulge in tales of horror, whisper of cryptids, and glance over your shoulder when the lights flicker, but you've never truly experienced it. That changes now. On September 19th and 20th, your search for truth and terror leads you to the Underworld Culture Convention at the historic Radisson Lackawanna Station Hotel in Scranton, Pennsylvania. An intricate labyrinth of secrets awaits you. Lectures and workshops covering every shadowy corner of the world you fear to understand. Horror, paranormal, cryptids, supernatural, occult, metaphysical, and so much more. Each step forward, each choice you make brings you closer to unveiling the darkness that lurks between reality's fragile surface. But remember, not all who enter will leave unchanged. The doors to the underworld are open, but will you have the courage to walk through? Make your choice.
I love that.
Isn't that
It's crazy.
incredible? So, for anybody who doesn't know, there is this incredible event that's going to be happening next year in September, and we're going to be running the commercials. It's going to be incredible. You can head over to Haunted Mafia events, look for it. Yeah, it's going to be a really great event that I'm super excited. I think Realm of Darkness will be there. Anyway, jumping back into it, so I do have someone who said that they did miss the first part, but if you are still on the road, they're sending you prayers, keep your head on a swivel, and they're really proud and just
Well,
kind
thank
of
you.
rooting for you. So I wanted to throw that out there before I didn't read that comment. But getting back into it, with some of the missing person cases, if I think sometimes people again don't realize how many people truly go missing. I ran the numbers last week, and it said that hundreds of thousands of people go missing in a year, and some of them are solved, some of them are not. And if in your area, if you were to get, I don't know the average number, but if you were to get 30 missing persons reports, aside from child and adult, are there different factors that kind of go into how the case is investigated? Like if they are known for being a runaway, or if they do have ties to drugs or sex work, versus maybe just a mother who works from home. Is there different things that you guys really have to look at?
Well, of course. I mean, they could be the contributing factor as to why this person might be missing, why they're not there. Are they habitual runaway? We have a couple that are habitual runaways, and the call comes in. It's like, oh, here we go again. All right, let's start going to let's start with the usual places that we have found them, the friends and family and that kind of stuff. Are they kind of a more transient person? I've had a few in my career where it's not uncommon, like family will call and be like, I can't get a hold of someone. And one of the first questions I always ask is like, well, what's the frequency in which you talk to this person? And sometimes it ranges to daily. Okay, now I'm a little bit more concerned, because if you talk to this person quite frequently and now all of a sudden they're not um, talking about, not talking to this person, that's unusual. But I've had some where it's like, well, I'll go 3 or 4 months and not talk to this person. Well, that creates a very big window for me to now that I have to go back and look through to figure out, well, when did this person leave the area? It's one thing for someone I talk to them daily, every day on the way home from work, and they didn't call today. And now I'm concerned well, I haven't talked to them in 4 months, but that's not unusual. It can make things very difficult because now my window of my investigation has expanded drastically, and it makes it a lot more hard.
Well, I was going to ask, obviously, a lot of the cases you get, like if they're legit, somebody's missing and you can't find them, they obviously at some point they end up being a cold case. How long do you guys typically work on a case until you label it as a cold case, and do you run out of leads? Is that usually how that happens, or?
Yeah, really don't consider a case cold until you run out of credible leads. As long as you keep getting credible leads, then it's not really necessarily a cold case. A case is really cold when it's like I've hit a dead end. No one no one knows from whatever point, a certain point, that no one knows where this person went from this point. Whether they stopped at a gas station and got gas, and maybe the last thing I have is, CC's camera footage at the gas station and then pumping gas, and then they turned out into the road, and then after that I have no idea where they went, because I got no cell phone data or something like that for whatever reason. That's kind of where things start to go cold, and then there's different things we can do to try to you know reinvigorate a case and kind of bring it back to light, especially with technology now. It's a lot easier to do that kind of stuff with cell phone pings and IP address searches and stuff like that. If they have social media and they connect to a social media, I can actually subpoena that information and get the IP addresses and what they pinged off of, and then restart the investigation there from wherever it is that they connected to something. So it's easier now in some ways, but harder in others, especially if they don't like technology, or they don't use the technology, or they get rid of the technology that they have in their pocket, it can become more complicated.
So we do have I see who asked the question. So it says, has there ever been a time when you found someone and found out that they really didn't want to be found? And how did you handle that?
Yes, I've actually had that happen quite frequently. A lot of these missing person cases um, are that they have decided that they want to move, they want to get away from their family for whatever reason. I'm able to make contact with that person, and with relative certainty. Again, this is going to be on a case by case basis. Obviously, this is a case of just we don't know where this person went. We have nothing else. Just this person isn't answering their phone. They're not at their house or their apartment or whatever it is. They're just gone. So there's no crime that's been committed, so to speak. um, Make contact with that person. I just verify who they are, that they're safe, that they're okay, they don't need anything. And then after that, they say they don't want their family to know or whatever. I'll contact the family, like, listen, I made contact with them. They're safe, they're okay, but they don't want to talk to you. Maybe one day they will reach out to you again, but I'm not going to tell you where they are because that's their wishes. So then it is what it is.
You can clearly see this is my husband. He has another question for you.
That's crazy.
That might start becoming I'll work with you on that. We'll talk. We'll talk offline, and I can facilitate something.
No. But no, that's actually, I'm kind of glad he asked that question because, when people see, not how to really go missing, but when you see these missing persons cases, they're normally women and children, but men do go missing too. And again, those ones, the media don't seem to care really because they are men, and people just assume, as we talked about last week, that people just figure, oh, they're going out for milk and they're not coming home.
They're not coming back.
Yeah. So is investigating a missing male case different or harder than like a female or a child?
No, they're really handled the same. A missing person. I don't want to say missing person is a missing person, but you're not going to downplay. Obviously, family cares. Someone that they love is not there now, and they want answers. You're going to start looking at other things because between juveniles and women and men, the the type of crimes that they are statistically victims to are different. Men are typically more victims to violent crime. So if a man goes missing, you're going to start to be a little bit more concerned that something violent took place. Not to say that obviously that doesn't happen to women and children, but just kind of using a generalization of it there. You're going to handle it exactly the same and try to figure out where they are.
Now, I'm going to kind of switch a little bit. And, with your 20 years experience and everything that you've done, what are some of the hardships that you think law enforcement go through that maybe the general public just doesn't understand?
I guess I'm going to have to ask you, what do you mean by hardship? Because that is kind of
Like,
broad.
I feel like, and guys, jump in on this too. I feel like even if you're helping, you're still the bad guy. If you have to break the bad news to a family of someone's past, car accidents, things like that, and it's like no matter what you do or the good things that you guys do and all the things that you partake in, the media always spins it to make you guys look bad. And then I personally feel like that puts a lot of you at risk when you shouldn't be. Like, I think people forget that this is a job and you guys are good at your job, but you're put at risk every single day because of the way that media plays things out. And I feel like that's a hardship for you guys. And I just don't, I guess I don't know how to properly ask the question. And it looks like we might be having some audio issues going on right now, but I guess how, I don't know. I'm not really sure how to ask it properly, but like, you know, you go through a lot with the media, and they pin a lot of things on you, and then when something negative happens, they blow it up, and it does put a lot of negative focus on law enforcement. So it's like, how do you guys kind of get through that, and how do you just kind of keep going?
Sorry, for some reason my headset desynced.
Did you miss that whole spiel? I can repeat it.
I did miss most of it because I was frantically trying to fix the audio issue. I do apologize.
No. Okay, the Cliff Note version is the media is consistently portraying negative things for law enforcement, which puts you guys at risk a lot for things that you shouldn't be. You should not fear your life doing your job. And you know, what is a misconception that maybe the public doesn't realize, that like you guys aren't all bad. You're truly trying to help, and the media, it's clickbait is what it is.
No one is ever happy to see us. We're not firemen. Whenever I get called to something bad has happened. There is very few times where I ever get sent to something and it's a good thing. It's nice when you do occasionally get those good calls, but they're few and far between. It gets complicated and it gets hard. And I think that's why officers, and you see it with a lot of safety service. It's not just police, but it's police, fire, nurses. They tend to kind of conjugate together in their own little groups, and they tend to just hang out with the people that know what they're dealing with, because the general public doesn't always understand. They don't get the shift work. They don't understand the calls. They don't understand what's going on. You know, I get called to, you know, a domestic in a house, and it's physical, and you know, the wife's beat up. I try to arrest the husband. The next thing I know, the wife is hanging off my back, clawing at me, attacking me because I'm arresting the husband. And how quickly things can change. You know, same with, you know, we get sent to people that are having a mental health crisis, and how rapidly those things can devolve and change. And all of a sudden now this person that was there, I'm trying to help, has now armed themselves, and now they're running around with a knife or a gun. And it's like, yeah, you called me here to help the situation, but now this person has a gun and they're pointing it at people. Like, I'm kind of now at a crossroads on what is it I'm going to be able to do. It gets very complicated, and society likes clean outcomes, but safety services don't always work in those realms of clean outcomes at the end. It just doesn't happen that way sometimes. And when it doesn't, you get a lot of people that get very upset because they think we have some sort of magic button that can always fix every problem nicely, and it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because, you know, like I said, you know, some people, they're the first to say that, you know, you're the bad guy, but then the minute they're in trouble, they want to call and they need your help. And I don't know, I respect what you do. I think law enforcement have extremely difficult jobs, not only physically, but mentally, emotionally, all of it. And I don't think that you guys get the credit that you deserve. And again, I think the media and the general public have a lot to do with that, unfortunately. And it's sad. It really is sad.
We have our faults. We have messed up. Any officer who ever says we don't mess up is a liar. To be quite frankly honest with you, we make mistakes. We are people. But unfortunately, a lot of times our mistakes are worse because of the outcome at the end. You know, someone makes a mistake, fixing your car, the car breaks down again or something like that. Generally, the outcome isn't some sort of catastrophic problem. We make a mistake. Sometimes people die. And so the end result is at times so much worse that when we do make a mistake, it's it, it it's looked at differently. And I get it and I understand it. It doesn't always make it easy, doesn't always make it right. And there's plenty of times where guys did the right thing and they're still lambasted in the media and everything, even though they did absolutely nothing wrong.
Yeah, and I do think in those situations, people just need someone to blame. I think it it gives people, I don't want to say closure, that's a bad word, but I think when something happens, it's natural for people to look for someone to blame, and instead of blaming the perpetrator, they blame law enforcement. And I'm just gonna say it, like if you are breaking the law, now I'm not talking about running a stop sign or anything like that. Those should be handled pretty calmly unless you're running. But if you're running from the police, if you're putting people in danger, if you have weapons, if you are, swinging a gun around, a loaded firearm, things are going to happen. The point of law enforcement is to keep the public safe, and that person is not keeping the public safe, and things do happen tragically. And I just don't understand why that blame is instantly put on police and not put on the perpetrator. Okay, maybe you shouldn't have done that. Maybe you shouldn't have been swinging a loaded firearm around. Maybe you shouldn't have done that. But Nate says it perfect, is the media will twist it to get the clicks, because that's what's going. Yeah, I don't know.
Once you realize the media is a business and they're in it to make money, they will do whatever it is they need to do to generate that revenue. So if it means making a sensationalized headline that isn't exactly true to the situation, they will do it and they don't care, because it's going to generate the clicks to their website. It's going to get people to tune in. It's going to get people to go to their media pages and all that kind of stuff. That's what they're in the business for. And the problem is that once they're done, they move on to the next thing, and then they wait for the next situation to happen. And if it's something even somewhat controversial, they have no problem running wild with the situation, and they don't take a lot of things into account. But at the end of the day, personally, I don't think they care, because they're in it to make money and they're in it to keep their doors open and their lights on. So if certain people get in the way of that, they don't care.
But they're putting people's lives at risk, and that's where I think I find the issue is, even law enforcement, like, you guys have families that go home to. You guys have mothers and fathers and wives and children and all these people that care about you. And when the media does twist things like that and they do put a lot of emphasis on an officer and maybe what they did wrong, or what they didn't handle it quite right, they put their picture up, they put their name up, and they put this individual who maybe they made a mistake. Okay, but they're putting not only this individual at risk, but they're putting their families at risk. They're putting their children at risk. And I just don't think it's fair. I don't.
No, that's why there's that funny meme of the guy at the gallows saying, first time, right? He's looking at it as if they're about to get hung. And, a lot of times you'll see it, say like police or fire or whatever, and, some group that normally isn't as critically exposed by the media is sitting there like all surprised. And, we're just, the guy who's just kind of smiling and laughing is like, first time, right? Like, you end up it just becomes another day. I wish I had a better answer for you, because you just learn to deal with it. And if not, we've had officers quit because they're just tired of dealing with it. I've lost friends, family, because of what I do, because of things that have happened and things that they have said, and it's just like, I'm not going to deal with you anymore. It's just not worth my time and effort, and I'm just going to move on with my life. It happens, and it's why, like I said earlier, people in this line of work, whether it's police, fire, nurses, that kind of stuff, they tend to become a little jaded and a little harsh and brash, because they have to. They don't have a choice.
Yeah. Now, I know that, like in this area, some of the departments, they're not fully staffed for
Mhm.
some of those reasons. Do you feel on a personal level that the departments and law enforcement, that they do get the resources they need to make sure that they're okay mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of it? Like, are there resources out there for law enforcement?
There are resources available, but I would like to say yes, but the answer is no. Um, Most agencies are short staffed. Some of your big departments in Ohio are short 200 to 300 guys. So they're completely cannibalizing all of their specialty units to just handle road patrol, and that creates problems like missing persons issues, human trafficking problems, because those units that would specialize in those investigations have been pulled from those investigations to go handle the road, because they're short. I mean, you can't be short 300 officers and still operate as business as normal. Now your scheduled days off have turned into mandatory mandated overtime that you can't say no to, or you're going to lose your job. It can wear on you very fast, and that's why you're seeing an ever increasing amount of officers not make it to retirement, because they're burnt out and they can't continue to do the job anymore. And the younger generation sees this. They see what's going on in the media. They see what's going on in society sometimes, and they just don't want to deal with it. So they don't even get into policing. When I started, I would take a civil service test, the test to get into law enforcement. It'd be one open spot, 200 to 300 applicants. Now I know of certain agencies, I'm not going to name names, they have put on tests and they haven't had a single applicant. They have an opening. They have a vacancy and they didn't even get a single applicant.
Wow.
Or they're getting 2 to 3, and the 2 to 3 of them are not hireable for whatever reason. They can't even hire these people. A lot of agencies are really, really hurting for manpower, and you start going into other resources now. Mandated overtime, there goes your budget, because now everyone's working mandated overtime to cover shifts. There goes your equipment budget. The big problem is training, and all this. Try not to get political, but when people go to these defunding movements, the first thing that goes is your discretionary spending. Your discretionary spending is your non-state mandated trainings. States require certain trainings every year to keep your license, your certification. Those trainings have to be done. Everything else goes. That's the first thing, because they still have to pay. They still have to pay salaries and benefits and all that kind of stuff. So they can't cut those. You can only cut your discretionary. Well, we're not like Sony, where we have a lot of discretionary spending. We have very limited discretionary spending, equipment and training. That's pretty much it in a police budget. So we're not getting new cars, we're not getting new radios, we're not sending people to specialized trainings. It's a compounding issue that just makes it harder and harder and harder.
Tom, you've been kind of quiet. You got any questions? Taking it all in. Oh, we can't hear you. Oh, that's why he's not talking. Do I have you muted? Nope. I don't.
That's weird.
Oh, okay. Well, Tom, you just sit there and look pretty then. Nate, so I know we were going back and forth in our chat.
Mhm.
Is there anything else that you think?
all the questions I had, we pretty much touched on everything. You were pretty open and honest about all of it, and we appreciate all that. I mean, the only thing I had, I kind of fun question. I thought maybe nothing to do with any of the other stuff we talked about, but we ran that little promo for the convention midway through the show, and you always hear like sometimes officers and stuff like that get called to like random calls in the middle of the night for like alarms and stuff like that. Have you ever been called and had something like a paranormal thing where you go and you're like, well, what's this alarm? And you know what I mean? Something like that. You always hear stories like that,
I love that. Let's turn it fun. Yeah.
So I'm not going to name the agency that I worked for, but they had some very old property on the area that we serviced. And one of the buildings was built in like the early 1900s. And part of the detail that we had to do was we would rotate the officers from sitting in dispatch because wintertime the dispatchers wouldn't be there. It was a weird department how things operated. It was a summer type thing, and so you would have to sit in the dispatch center, and we would get phone calls all the time from the old buildings. And I was told that the one building, it was the same room number. I don't remember the room number now off the top of my head, but to get the calls to stop, you would tell them that their package was at the front desk. And how the call system would work is the call would ring in and it would tell you the room number that was calling. So when you see that room number, you would pick up the phone and say, your package is at the front desk. If you didn't say that, the calls would continue. So you'd hang up the phone and then you would wait. And then, 20, 30 minutes later, it would ring back again. The phones were disconnected.
So
that's crazy.
The phones are disconnected. The motion alarms were always going off. That we didn't even respond to the building. Like the motion alarms would go off in that building so much that we didn't even bother responding to that building. We could, like I said, this was a very unique situation. We had the ability to not go there. It was like our property. We controlled it. So it wasn't like someone else's property. It was, like I said, unique situation. We just wouldn't even go. You would drive around at night because I worked night shift. You would see people walking by the windows. You would see the curtains move. You go up and check the doors. All the doors are locked. Like, okay, I'm just getting in the car. Bye.
Yeah. We do the opposite of that. We run into those kind of places. So.
Well, I was just going to say, we're going to have to talk off air because if you still have connections, we'll investigate it.
I have been told that they have had people go into some of these buildings and they have gotten things. I don't know how willing these entities that now control these buildings would be willing to, but maybe. But yes, a lot of these buildings that we went into, you would hear footsteps, you would hear talking. I mean, these are buildings that were built sometimes in the late 1800s, 1900s that were still in operation to that day and still in operation to this day. And yeah, you would hear things all throughout the night. I hated going into the station because, like I said, it was a weird situation. The dispatch, we would move things during whatever the time of the year was. I hated going into the station because up above you was a big empty room. And you would always hear dancing and movement and things getting dragged across the floor. I worked for another police department a couple years later, and we had just built a new station. And I'm sitting there. It's the middle of the night. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll never forget it. I'm sitting there typing a report, and I can hear talking. I could hear a woman talk. There were no women on duty that night. So I'm like, what is that? And we're sitting there, you couldn't make out what they were saying, but you could hear distinctly a woman talking, and you would hear it all the time. Our evidence room had evidence moved around in it. Went to check the cameras. No one went in. The evidence was moved.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that station was super haunted.
in the chat over here, we have people going, send the address. And then someone else said that cops always know the best spots. And then someone said that what he's saying is true, so true for most of the LEOs. So
yeah, oh yeah, I've been into plenty of places that you'll hear things. We get ghost calls and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, anyone who has done this job for a period of time has encountered something at some point or another. You know, I kind of laugh and just keep going about my business because I think it's kind of fun and kind of cool. Other people are like that's it, I'm out, bye. And I'm like, no, hold on, let's go deeper. Let's keep going through this building here. Come on.
See, so I'll just have to like ship you some of our equipment, and then you report back to us after you investigate it.
Love it.
So I guess the good question with that is, are you a believer?
Oh, 100%. Some of the stuff that I've seen and heard, even before my law enforcement career, yeah, what I've seen shadow people. I've heard talking. I've encountered many things in my life that I was just like, yeah, 100%.
That's incredible.
It's one thing I have noticed, like a lot of paranormal investigators have had some kind of law enforcement background because of, things like that. They've always had stuff happen to them. So that's why I thought it was kind of a fun question to ask you. It seems like everybody's always got a story when you talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you want to go down that paranormal route, if you can tell us, what is the craziest experience that you've had? And it can be paranormal or it can be in the field, whichever you feel like sharing.
So I was not working. Actually, I was very young at the time. We're talking like early 90s. Those of you that are old enough remember Furbies.
Yes.
So me and a couple friends are sitting in his living room, and this Furby, it's like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. It's that wonderful witching hour. And this thing is just going off constantly. It will not stop. And it keeps saying hi all the time. So I wasn't very old. I was maybe 10 or something. And finally, I get so tired of it, I turn the switch off. It's still going off. It's still talking. I find a screwdriver. I take the battery out of it, and being the dumb kid, I mocked it. I said, I remember to this day, I said, I can't talk now, can ya? And it said hello again. That Furby went across the house. I threw that Furby as far as I could. You would constantly see, this house was built in like 1905, my friend's house that we were in. And it actually had a servant's quarters off in the back end of the property. It actually had a servant's staircase in the back where the servants used to walk up and down. And you would always hear and see a shadow figure. It was a man. You could see it would be about half from his waist up. You could see it, head, shoulders, arms, everything, and he would always peek around the corner. We just got so used to it. We named him. We would look back and we would see him. We were like, "Hey, how you doing?" And we just acknowledge it, and we just left it alone. Like it, you could tell it wasn't menacing in any way, shape, or form. You never felt like threatened by it. It was a little unnerving. We weren't that old, but you just kind of let it go, and it's just Well, I would see him all that I know it was a guy because you could tell it was a male. You could see it all the time. That house is still there. Last time I drove by there when I was back in that area, and I've always wanted to go back and talk to the homeowner and see if hey, do you like? I'm not gonna. We named him George. I don't know why, but that's the name we gave him. I always wanted have you seen George? He's on the back staircase. I want to say hi. It was quite an experience.
So, would you ever do like an overnight investigation in a infamous haunted location?
I've always wanted to I've tried before, but I couldn't get tickets to go down to the Mansfield Reformatory and do the overnight at the Mansfield Reformatory. I have tried to do that before. Right now, it's just finding the time to do something like that. Between the kids and work and everything they have me running around doing, we've now hit our busy time of the year. Any law enforcement officer will tell you summer is like our busy time of the year, especially where I'm located. It's a night and day difference between summer and winter. It's very difficult for me to find time to do anything other than eat, sleep, and go to work.
I can only imagine. Well, I will say the three of us do have a group called Haunted Travels Paranormal. So if you ever want to go out, you can come with us. Just let us know. You can investigate with us. But the only difference is it's just the three of us. It's not 20 people. It's literally just us and our equipment. So
well, that would be an improvement for some of the places I've been in where it's literally just me and a flashlight. So me and a flashlight and a radio. So
you're halfway
there. You got the hard stuff already.
Yeah, you got a flashlight. Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll have to take you if you ever want to go. We'll have to take you to one of our favorite locations.
I will probably take you up on that.
You should.
I've always enjoyed. Every time I go traveling somewhere, I always try to do like the guided haunted tours and walks to hear the creepy backstories of wherever it is that I'm at. It's like one of the first things I look up when I go to a place. Is like, do they have one of these tours? And I always take it every single time.
Sounds like me.
Every time I have to get it in. I don't care how I have to work it out. I always go on one of those tours.
So guys, are we hearing Hinsdale? Should we start them off big?
Start them off at a big one. Yeah.
Start them off on one of the biggest.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll have to let us know when you're free, and we'll find a good location. There's a couple in New York that are really good. Hinsdale House in New York is great. Madison Seminary in Ohio is great. Mansfield's always good. That's a huge location. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You let us know. We'll
make that happen.
No, I'll have to take you up on that.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
I find stuff like that fun.
Yeah.
It's the adrenaline junkie in me. Let's be honest. People that do this line of work, they like adrenaline. They like doing that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Well, and since Tom can't talk, we'll say we like to pick on him sometimes at locations. But we do sleep in the locations too. So I have a running... I don't even know. I don't mean to, but I accidentally scare Tom every single time. In a location.
Well, I'm very good at walking around very quietly, so I can be more than happy to take part in that, and I can pretty much sleep anywhere. That's one of the beauties of being in the service. You learn to sleep in any corner you could find. So I just need a corner, and I'll be all right.
Well, we tend to, when we sleep in the locations, we all try to sleep in the same area, and I apparently have this great talent of randomly waking up in the middle of the night, telling them that I see something and going right back to sleep, and then just leaving them hang with whatever apparently is hanging out in the hallways.
I believe it.
Every time. But with that, we are coming to an end of the show. So I want to personally say thank you for coming on, for speaking truth, being so open and honest with us. I'm hoping that this sheds a little light for the general public and the people watching on what law enforcement has to go through, how you guys handle things. But I just thank you for coming on. Nate, you started it. Why don't you go ahead and wrap it up?
Yeah, I mean,
wrap up the show.
Like she said, we appreciate you coming on and being open and, very informative for us and for everybody watching. I mean, you had, like we said, we'll be in touch. We'll take you out with us sometime. It'll be fun.
That sounds good. And if something pops back up again, then you need someone to come in and shed some light on something. Just how to get a hold of me. Just reach out to me. Let me know. I'm more than happy to come up. Like I said, getting the information out to the general public is something I've always felt that needs to happen. It shows why we're doing what we're doing. I think I've noticed in my career a lot of times if you just explain the why am I doing what I'm doing, a lot of the questions end up going away because now it makes sense. So that was kind of why I wanted to come on today.
Perfect.
Yes, and we appreciate it because we agree. We think there's a lot of things that the general
So
public
you know how to get a hold of me if you have any other questions. More than happy.
Perfect.
Of course. But with that, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you guys for being on. We are going to run a small clip real quick. Realm of Darkness will be at Valerie Vineyard on June 7th. So you can get tickets, you can come investigate with us, hang out with us. There's appetizers, there's wine, and there's paranormal. So what else do you need? Plus, the three of us will be there because we're fun. Come hang out with us. With that, we will see you guys next week. We love you, and everybody have a wonderful night. Bye.
Did you hear that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there somebody here in the stairwell with us? Is there somebody here right here?